right, Coach, what do you think about what Brett Favre said? Is Nick Foles a proven starter?
Well, I do agree in terms of the comparison he's making Brady-esque as not a necessarily mobile guy, a pure pocket passer. I think that's where he was going with that. In terms of him being a starter, it's so hard to say because you look at his body of work, he's never started a full season. And even after he had his big year in Philadelphia where he threw 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, they traded him. They traded him the Rams to get Sam Bradford, and they gave up a 2 and a 4 and got...
It was weird. There was a 3 back. It was quarterbacks and draft picks traded.
But they wanted to move on from him. Okay, so maybe they made a mistake at that point, but he goes to St. Louis at the time, and he doesn't do very well in St. Louis, and then he ends up going to Kansas City with Andy Reid, who drafted him, and Andy was willing to move on from him. So you look at it, there's enough coaches in that mix, there's enough systems in that mix, why do we have this disconnect that we have? And can you count on him to play 16 games, and is he at his best as a reliever as opposed to a full-time starter? And how do you say it? Because he's never done it. So you're betting on the guy that you've seen over this last period of time that you can project that out over 16 games in the playoffs.
Listen, I think Nick Foles should be a starter in this league, but I would be it's a very specific type of team that I think is going to get the most out of Nick Foles. To me, Nick Foles' biggest attribute right now is he's one of, and there's not a long list of quarterbacks like this, that we know through multiple playoff game experience, the moment won't be too big for him. That we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, like the question that you have about Carson Wentz, and that's not a knock on Wentz.
But then he's got to go to a team that's going to make the playoffs.
Well, so that's the thing, that you have this question about literally any quarterback that hasn't played in the playoffs, right? No matter how good they look, what will they look like in the biggest moments? We know the moment won't be too big for Nick Foles, but I don't think he's a force multiplier, to use your term, that's going to take a team that is a below average team and get them to the playoffs. So you have to find this like Goldilocks zone of team that is good enough to make the playoffs with average quarterback play, that needs a quarterback that can say we want it. Like, I think Denver makes sense for instance, because I still think they have a good defense. I like what they're able to do. I like the coach they hired. I think they should be able to compete for a wild card spot. And we know if they get there, the moment's not too big for him. But like a rebuilding team like Miami, I think his skills would be wasted because I don't think he's good enough to make Miami much better. And if his whole utility is, if we get to the big games, he's been there, done that, what good does that do if your team's 6-10?
But what are the chances he's going to get placed in a situation that A, pays him, B, is ideal, C, that the Eagles don't pick up his option? It just seems like so many things have to happen for him to be in the ideal situation where he can play his best football.
Not unless he's able to get to Jacksonville and that defense. They go out back to the type of season they had 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago. Compared to that, they got someone there in John DeFilippo who is familiar with his skill set, because I've been in too many locker rooms and there's a lot of guys, man, that like to be that relief pitcher. And they are so comfortable, that day-to-day pressure, they don't have to deal with it. All that media, they don't have to deal with it. They don't have to be the big man on campus in front of the locker room with the other guys. They don't have to practice to a high standard every day. There are guys that thrive at that. And to me, that's what Nick Foles has done. The best thing for Nick Foles is staying in Philadelphia behind Carson Wentz. But if he wants to be a starter, to me, he's played well. If Case Keenum is a starter, he should be a starter. All right? Because he is a better version of Case Keenum. That's probably the reason why you have him going to Denver.
Yes.
But
and I don't have him going to Denver. I just mean
that's a proper placement, because he's better than the guy there. To me, I still worry. Brett Favre, what got Brett Favre out of Green Bay? It wasn't his ability to play. It was that the guy behind him has a higher ceiling. And that's what you have with Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. To me, Nick Foles will never be better than he is right now. Don't fool yourself. And if you think that he can take over a franchise and lead them, he's a force multiplier, I think that you're missing on it and you're just caught up in the moment. Because I watched Nick Foles play his whole career, but I also watched the last 3 quarters of that Saints game, and he was everything but a force multiplier. He did not make big throws. He did not make great decisions. He was not that type of leader. When he was going against Drew Brees, the score ended up being 20-0 after that first quarter. So don't get caught up in the hype. Look at it, and I've been with guys that they were better sitting in the back seat or being in the passenger seat than actually driving the car, Coach.
Yeah, it's a little bit like runners. Some people are built for marathons, and some people are sprinters, and that's just what they're good at. I would be interested to see him go to like the Giants, where it's a West Coast offense, and it's a system that he's thrived in. He needs to go to the system that he's been good at as well. And I think that was one of the problems in St. Louis, is he went from a system that he was very effective in to a system that he wasn't very effective in. So that system fit is important. You could see him in Washington. They, with Alex Smith and Colt McCoy, they have a real issue there. It's a coaching staff that needs to probably bring in a veteran guy and
I think you like the intel that he has against that NFC East.
You like the intel that he has against he's competed in this division and done well in this division. So those are 2 spots I could see that makes sense for especially the Giants from a scheme perspective to stay in the West Coast system.
The Giants were the team that I was, when we circle back around, going to come to if the Giants aren't going to draft Haskins or a different young quarterback at number 6. If the Giants aren't going to do that, because I do think they have excellent offensive talent, and if they want to use that 6th overall pick, Dave Gettleman tried to do last year, which is win right now, what I know Pat Shurmur would like to do, which is win right now, but will also move on from Eli. I think that is the type of team I'm talking about, a team that you think credibly, oh, that could be a 10-win team next year.
And then when you look at it, how do you choose him over Flacco? I mean, you got Flacco's going to be on the market too. Looking at 2 guys that have won.
Yep.
How do you make that decision?
All right, Coach, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, as Tom Brady gets